Hey everyone! Today, we're diving into a course that really lays out the blueprint for what it means to be a modern educator. It's called Principles of Educational Instruction. So, let's get into what it really takes to be a great teacher in the world we live in today.
Right off the bat, the course asks this huge question. What does a 21st century teacher actually need in their toolkit? Because let's be honest, it's not just about chalkboards and textbooks anymore. The modern classroom, whether it's in person or online, is a completely different ballgame.
And the answer really boils down to three key things. First, you've got to deeply understand how your students' minds actually work. Second, you need to be able to use technology, not as a gimmick, but as a seriously powerful tool. And third, you have to create a digital space that's both exciting and, most importantly, safe. This course is all about giving you those exact skills.
So let's dig into that first piece of the toolkit, the foundational knowledge of how your students learn. This is the blueprint for any effective teaching, right?
The entire approach here is grounded in something called the science of learning. And this is so important because it's not about guesswork or just doing things the way they've always been done. It's about taking actual cognitive science research, hard data on how the brain works, and turning it into practical strategies you can use in your classroom tomorrow.
It really demystifies learning by breaking it down into these core ideas. For instance, students learn best when they can connect new information to stuff they already know. Helping them build those mental bridges, that's a real art. It also drives home that spaced practice, studying over time, beats cramming. Every single time. Why? Well, it gives the brain a chance to lock that information into long-term memory. And this one is huge. Students are just more motivated to learn when they feel like they actually belong.
Okay, so that all sounds great in theory, but let's be real. Today's classrooms are incredibly diverse. So how in the world do you take these big ideas and design lessons that actually work for every single student, no matter what their needs or learning style might be?
Well, the answer is a framework called Universal Design for Learning, or UDL. You can think of this as the practical playbook for putting the science of learning into action in a classroom full of different kinds of learners. It's all about designing flexible lessons so that every student can get what they need to succeed.
UDL is pretty simple. It's built on three core ideas. First, the why. This is all about offering multiple ways to get students engaged and motivated. Then, there's the what. That means presenting information in different ways, like text, video, or audio. And finally, the how, which is about giving students choices in how they show you what they've learned, whether that's through a test, a project, or even a presentation. Okay, let's shift gears to the second part of that toolkit, your educational technology. And the key phrase here is with purpose. This is not about just having the flashiest new gadgets.
The course makes this really important distinction between passive and active use of tech. Passive is, just mindless scrolling or zoning out to a video. But active consumption, which is the goal, is when students are actually using the tech to think, to process information, or to create something brand new. That's the difference between a distraction and a real learning tool.
And this quote from the course material it hits the nail on the head. The whole point of any tech tool should be to get students actively learning something that's tied to a specific goal. If it doesn't do that, it's probably not the right tool for the job. Simple as that.
And this isn't just high-level theory. You get into the nitty-gritty of which tools to use and when. You learn about using tech for assessments, like digital quizzes, and for engagement, like those cool collaborative whiteboards. You also explore super important accessibility tools like screen readers. And, crucially, you learn how to evaluate any new tech using established frameworks like SAMR or PICRAT.
Of course, with all this powerful technology comes a massive responsibility. And that brings us to the third critical part of the toolkit, what I like to call the digital shield. It's all about keeping your students safe in the online world.
So the foundation of online safety is just knowing what you need to protect. And it all starts with something called Personal Identifiable Information, or PII. Put simply, this is any piece of data that could be used, one way or another, to figure out who a specific student is.
And to make it really concrete, we're talking about way more than just a name. PII includes things like a student's ID number, their email, their birthday, even their location data from a phone. All of this is sensitive stuff that teachers have a professional and legal duty to protect.
And that duty is actually written into law. It's called FERPA, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. This is the big federal law that governs student data privacy. And for any educator, understanding this isn't optional. It is an absolute must.
So, you've learned the science of how students learn, you've built up your tech toolkit, and you know how to keep everyone safe. The final piece of this whole course is where you take all that knowledge and actually build your own digital classroom.
And this is a totally hands-on project. The final assignment isn't writing a paper. It's about building a real, working, accessible course inside a learning management system, an LMS, like Canvas or Google Classroom. And they give you this awesome blueprint to follow. You learn how to make a welcoming landing page, create a logical system so students can find everything, embed all sorts of media, and build good assignments and quizzes, complete with really clear grading rubrics. It's a fantastic, practical final test.
And the whole thing culminates in this skill certification test that checks if you've really mastered all these essential principles, from learning science all the way to tech integration. Passing it is basically your proof that you're ready to go. Ultimately, the big takeaway is crystal clear. This course gives you the specific, practical tools you need to go from being someone who wants to be a teacher to being a truly future-ready teacher who's prepared for the classroom of today and tomorrow. So, I guess the final question is really for you. After seeing this blueprint for evidence-based instruction, purposeful technology, and student safety, are you ready to build the modern educator's toolkit?